So you were speaking about so you're talking about the Babylon, why the name comes of Babylon, and you said bomb Babylon. You remember what he was going on from there?
I mean, one of the things we didn't associate with African Americans that because they wanted to fit in, we're like, how can you want to fit into a country that's held you captivity for 400 or 500 years? So that's us in our mindset. We're like, that doesn't make sense to us. So we're like, we've got to burn Babylon down because from a biblical aspect, we're living in Babylon. You understand? So for us, our remit was we're fighting Babylon to the last ends. You understand? But
what was the mission?
The problem was there was no mission. This is why I'm saying we were young black kids who were angry.
Just fighting back, literally. Just fighting back.
We didn't have a plan. This is what I'm saying to you. When I said to you, we ain't left nothing for like my man there for him to come into. We were so angry.
Sheldon, do you mind me asking, when did you first learn about slavery then? Because obviously you said you first got called, you were verbally assaulted first. When did you actually learn about slavery?
I'm going to come into that straight. So basically, we were so angry we didn't have a plan. Okay, the plan was just to burn down Babylon, hurt the police, and that was it. Now, here's where things changed. In 1977, we came home from school, me and my guy Chris. Now, in them days, there was only 3 TV channels, BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV. BBC Two only came on at 7 in the evening. There was no Channel 4, no Sky, no computers, no laptops, no phones.
I think they still do something like that, but they come on after that.
Right.
4:30, 5:30.
So
BBC Three.
Yeah. So BBC Two comes on at 7 o'clock, and a program called Roots comes on. Now, remember this: no black kid up until 1977 were told by their parents we were enslaved.
That's mad. Yeah, that's mad.
Most of us weren't told that. I'm not saying all of us. Most of us.
Yeah.
So we've come home from school. And we've turned on this TV, and me and Scott is like, so, on top of us calling us a Sambo and a gollywog and beating us up, you took us as slaves. That's when it got real nasty.
And you said 77, so you was 12.
Yeah, So,
8 times.
That's when my anger just went through the roof. So I realised that my mum and dad withheld information that could have helped me, that could have calmed me down, that could have made me a different person. Then on top of it, I've realised that the white men don't like us. But back then, you viewed all white people the same, which was wrong, because obviously when you're angry, you don't realise that not all white people are racist. You don't put that logic on it. You're just a 12-year-old black kid, and you see Roots, and you see Kunta Kinte.
You say it's conditioning. You receive that from certain parties, so now you think, you know what I'm saying?
Every time you see an older white guy, they're trying to hurt you.
Yeah, literally.
So you're brainwashing.
You're conditioned to think like that.
So when we saw that, the very next day, see, I was a captain of the school football team because I used to play football, yeah? And so I was the captain of the school football team. When I went in the next day, I lined up all the white kids, said, you're never playing football with us again. I lined them up. I told every black kid, I told every black kid in our school, you're not to talk or associate with anybody white.
Wait, hold on a second. Do you know how many stories I've heard of black people in your generation talk about how things changed after Roots came out?
Yeah.
And how they
Same
just...
with my parents.
That's when it must have come out.
Yeah, like everyone just started going to school, like going around the area, like,
nah,
as soon as you can.
I know what you did, bro. You know what I'm saying? Did they show it to you like at St. Bonds?
Yeah,
they showed it to us.
We sat there.
At school, they showed it to us. I was probably year 9.
See what I'm saying? Things have changed, and that's what I'm saying. For us, it was like... Yeah. So I went into school. Now remember, I'm not the oldest kid in school. I'm only year 12.
Yeah.
I've gone up to people who are 3 years older than me. I said, if I see you talking to anybody white, I'm breaking you up. Because remember, up until then,
you're in year 11.
You know, up until then,
That's mad.
Because the way I talk, because what happened was I had an older brother who was in 2 years older than me. So I was 12, he was 14. Yeah. Now, basically,
good reinforcements.
No, he couldn't fight.
Oh, right.
So he couldn't fight. So basically, what had happened was before Roots came on, I had to protect him because he couldn't fight. So people knew me as a violent guy already. Because they knew I had a gang, everybody was scared of me, even though I wasn't the best fighter. So when I've gone up to people who were like either leaving school or got a year to go, and I'm saying, bruv, if I catch you speaking to white people, it's on. And remember, my gang was 25 man deep. So I'm calling 25 man on one person. So they don't want that. Do you understand? So I've gone in there and it was apartheid. It was apartheid. No black person was allowed to speak to a white person, ever. They weren't allowed in the football team.
How long did
It was Jeffrey Chaucer.
And these are rules that you enforced?
I enforced.
And what?
Every day. Every day. No, that's what anger does to you.
Did you have to punch anyone up for breaking the rules?
I punched up enough people.
Did they break the rules?
Yeah, people. There were certain people like you had the black guy who wanted to go out with this white girl, and when I heard about it, I had to break him up. Do you know what I'm saying? I had to break up my own brother for going out with a white girl.
Yeah.
Because remember, that's what anger does to you. Remember, I'm not seeing straight here. I'm not trying to justify what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm not seeing straight. I'm just an angry black guy, and everybody who's with me is angry as well. So that's gone on.
How long did this last for? Those rules?
Until I left school.
So 5 years.
Yeah,
7 to 11.
Yeah, but no, it was. I say year 8, maybe 9. From then and onwards, because I was about 12 going 13.
Right.
So really,
year 8 onwards.
it was it was really up until then.
So that's mad. Okay. Sorry, Sheldon, man. You're making me laugh. You're punching up everyone in the end because they weren't. But I hear it though, because obviously you guys were so like angered by what you saw because you were miseducated.
You know what got us angry was when he was chased. Kunta Kinte was chased. And they cut his foot off. Yeah. That killed us. I mean, me and Chris cried. Like, I'll be honest with you, it was a shock to me. I'm going to be honest. And that's when me and my dad and everybody, we fell out. Because I'm like, how can you be so subservient to the point where you don't want to tell your kids? And he tried to justify it by saying, well, if we tell you what you want, what would that do? So he tried to justify it to me. But I'm saying, if I had known, maybe I might not have been this angry person, because then you know when you know something, you got the knowledge, you can kind of steer things in a different direction.
Did you guys ever mend that?
No, yes and no. I mean, before, like obviously, as I got older and I began to realise, my dad was scared, my mum was scared. See, I don't know what it was like coming to England, a white man's country. And you've got nothing, because a lot of them came here under lies. So for instance, my mum was told, her friend said, I live in a big house, come to England. When she got there, there was no big house. My mum had to sleep in a park.
But they do that now.
My mum had to sleep in a park.
Yeah. I mean, not now, sorry, sleeping in the park, but I mean, like,
Lying
lying to people at home about how you're living.
And she came here, and when the guy answered the door, the guy said, she don't own nothing. She has a room here, and you are not invited, and shut the door. That was in the days.
Wow.
Yeah, because that was in the days of no.
So that's why she had to sleep in the park.
Yeah, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs.
Yeah. So that was her first encounter.
That was her first encounter. She and I can understand. So what I'm saying, basically, what I'm saying is this: I think parents have got a lot to do with how your child comes out.
That's what my next question. Would you recommend? Because that's why I asked you. Did you mend that? Because my thing now, looking at the way the dynamics work with the places that we're from, which is the inner city, whatever city you're from, listening to this, like the relationship with the parents, the conversations with the parents, right? If, like, that's what I'm saying. How important do you feel like it was? Because I know you're saying it's important now. How important do you think it is for younger generations now to speak to their parents, to understand what the hell is going on out here? Or what the hell was going on with you? Or what the hell was going on, just so they can understand why what's going on around them is going on?
Well, to be honest, it's a good question. Personally speaking, I think parents should spend more time with the kids when they were young. See, the mistake my mum and dad made, and it's not, I'm not saying it's their fault. If they had sat down and reasoned with me and said, listen, this is what it was like growing up under colonial rule. We had no choice. We don't know how to love kids because we weren't loved ourselves. We didn't know none of that. I didn't know until later. My dad went to walked, I think 1 mile, 2 miles with no shoes to school. I didn't know that. I didn't know my dad had to kill a chicken before he could eat food. See, when you don't know
in
these
England,
no, in Jamaica,
Right.
So you got. So what I'm saying to my dad, this is what to answer your question. Now that we could reason when we get older, I'm saying to my dad that if you had sat down with us and explained why you were scared to tell us about slavery and colonialism, how you grew up, we could understand you better. But because he didn't do that, and to answer your question, that's what I think is wrong today with young people and adults.
Yeah, so yeah, well, your dad, you kind of wish your dad would have told you that you went through roots. I'm not saying I wish I didn't, but what difference does it going to make?
To answer your question, it all depends on how they do it. So, for instance, some parents could saturate their children with too much information, overload, and they do it every day, yeah? And they think, I better tell them. So every day they at them. That can have a reverse effect. It's called reverse psychology, yeah?
They rebel.
And they rebel against that information. What I was trying to say to my dad was that you didn't even give us anything. A chance to even... Because what I'm saying is, I didn't want to become a gang member. Who wants to walk around with a gun? Who does that? Like, no one in this room would want to get up and say, yeah, I want to be a gunman. We don't. Let's be honest. We're peaceful people. All of us. Black, white, it don't matter. We don't want to do it. But then when you're forced into a situation because your parents couldn't be bothered to tell you, and the thing is, what made it worse was I didn't even feel loved at home. See, this is the thing. It isn't just the information about slavery. My mum and dad didn't know how to love because they weren't loved. So when you grow up in a situation where it's called survival, yeah? The people of my generation were survivalists. We don't know nothing about love. So if you look at the average, now I'm not trying to say white kids don't do this. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just going to focus a little bit on just the black man at the moment. That isn't to say white guys don't do this. They do it, okay? Why do you think so many black men have so many different children for so many different women?
Because they don't know how to love. Is that what you're trying to say?
That's right. They have no concept of commitment and love. Not every black guy, I'm just saying, right? And it does happen in the white communities, even much more, right? The point what I'm saying here is, if you don't feel loved, and you don't know how to give love, you having a child will mean nothing.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying to my mum, because you can teach me, you can tell me as much about racism, but what you didn't do is the process, right? You didn't do the catalytic converter, you didn't do that right, and now, what I am today, you cannot change or alter it or get mad because I am who I am because you didn't know how to love or convey that. So that's where
it's called nurturing what you're talking about, okay? And I use the attachment theory a lot. And attachment theory, when you guys get a chance, look it up. There's different ones, Bowlby and Bowen. They do all different attachment theory. The one thing they talk about in attachment theory is nurturing. Now, this is where I will bring in poor white communities. Look at the similarities with poor white communities and black communities. They're exactly the same. They're both being discriminated against. So poor whites are discriminated by middle class whites. Blacks are discriminated on the colour of their skin. So that's one similarity. Okay. 2. In the poor white communities, they're more likely to be unemployed. Now, I know you might find this hard to believe, but in the black community, we're less likely to be unemployed. There are more of us unemployed, but there's a difference between poor white community and us. They have what you call a welfare dependent. They're more likely to sign on, and blacks are not likely to sign on. Now, I know some people listening to think that that's not adding up because more black people are unemployed. Yes, that's because the percentage of us is small. But actually, on average, we don't believe in signing on.
Like universal credit and things
like
that.
Yeah, we don't believe in it. They do. So when you look at the two races, the two communities, What else do they have in common? Simple. If you look at their men in the poor white communities, they're more likely to be in jail or involved in the underworld. They're more likely to be involved in criminality. That's not the case in the black community. You will not find an entire family involved in criminality in the black community. You won't. You may find the odd one brother there and maybe the brother there, but in the white community, poor white communities, I'm being specific here, not middle class white community, I'm talking about poor white communities, so people understand and don't get confused, I'm not generalizing. You're more likely to find the entire family are criminals. So there are similarities and there are situations that both communities don't address, which is fathers. Both communities do not address that.
Common denominator. Right?
Yeah, it's a common theme. And so within those two communities, there's lack of love, lack of, we don't break the cycle. So it's taken me years to break that cycle. Okay, I've got 4 kids of my own. But generally speaking, we don't break cycles, both communities. So when you look at us, if you go down the street, 1 in 2 black kids grow up with no fathers. Now.
1 in 2.
1 in 2.
That's mad. That's crazy.
Same in the poor white communities. This one, and no one talks about it because all we do is that.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Black community or poor black community?
I would say a mixture of both. Because middle class
I only realised that you were specifically talking about a specific group of white people, and then we were talking about black.
But the middle class whites have the same problem, but different in the sense of the fathers are not absent, but they are absent. Let me explain to you what I mean.
Affairs,
in middle class white, say again?
Affairs and all that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So people think
bare minimum,
right?
Is it that they do the bare minimum?
They pay the rent.
And
they come home.
There you are. That's it.
They come home from work.
They're here, but they're absent. They're physically here, but mentally they're
so
gone.
what people need to understand in poor white communities,
This is deep.
in poor white communities, they are absent. In middle class white communities, they're in the house but absent. So
they're at work mashing the secretary.
So
but they're at home paying the rent. Excuse the language.
So the children are still not getting the love from middle class families. When you go into black families, okay, so you're talking about poor black families, and there's, on average, black families are not the poorest, by the way. So we gotta be factual. The actual poorest people are poor whites and Bangladeshis. Not black families.
Is that in the world or in England?
In England.
It makes sense.
Because we act, and I'm going to be honest with you, we've got to.
My bad.
We've got to understand that there's this myth that black people are the lowest of the low. They're not. The fact is,
it's perception and conditioning.
And the fact is, it's poor whites who are the.
But do you know what? Do you mind me asking why the Bangladeshis as well? Like the only reason that I could actually think of potentially is because they have really big families. So
no, I'm going to be honest with you, and this is where it's going to get controversial. Personally speaking,
if it's going to get too controversial, don't say it, OG.
Think about yourself. I'm here for the controversy. No, I'm here for it.
No, it's going to get.
It's about yourself. Think about yourself.
No. I can
we
say.
don't care.
Basically, in the Bangladeshi family, they have not incorporated themselves into society, in British society, so they don't speak English.
Right.
So their first language, and what I'm saying is this: if I go to live in France, and I'm going to live there, why wouldn't I want to learn French so that I can communicate?
It's common sense.
Right. The Bangladeshi community does not do that. And that's where I think the problem is. Because if your first language isn't going to be English, what job are you going to get?
Yeah, it's about being realistic.
And I think this is the truth.
Concept,
I'm just saying, from my perspective, and people might not like the sound, because people will be like, why should they speak English? Well, if you're choosing to live
have
here,
their own opinion.
If you're choosing to live here, right, in England, our first language is English, correct? Now, if your first language, no one's saying you must get rid of your language. What I'm saying is this: you should learn the English language so that your children have some good prospects. So when we talk about unemployment amongst Bangladeshi, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. So when I say that on average, black families are not the poorest. I don't know why there's this myth around. We are not the poorest. In fact, on average, we do better than most white families. On average. The problem is is that we are unlikely to have good jobs. That's what the problem is. The problem is we're unlikely.
So how would people know if they're doing well if it's not classed as having a good job?
There's many ways. It depends on your values and principles and where you see yourself. So, for instance, when I was young, I just saw myself as a cop beater. So I beat up police officers, yeah? But when I got a little bit more wiser, I realised not all white people are racist, and I had to grow up. And I had to learn that through two people. A man called Jesse Jackson, who's from America, and a man called Bernie Grant, who was the first black MP. And it was through them that I began to realise that not all whites were racist, and that it was a system that they operate in that is racist.
But people, think about this, yeah? You're growing up in a place, yeah, where you have lived, let's say, from year 8 till year 11, and you have thought for all of those years that all white people are racist. Can you imagine what bubble you live in to still see white people around and think you're racist, you're racist, you're racist, you're racist? Do you know what I mean? That's like living in a bubble. That goes to show.
But being
where
that age as well, you can't think any.
And the fact you
see
can't
what I'm
talk
saying
about it as well.
Yeah, you can't talk to it. So it's like you're caged in where you can physically go and how you can think. You know what I'm saying?
It limits you to your opportunities, like sort of what Josh was saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, you see. And this is why, when I met Jesse Jackson, I was glad for the meeting.
You met Jesse Jackson?
I stayed at his house.
Okay.
I stayed at his house.
Right, those things.
So Jesse Jackson, I stayed at his house. I did a couple of TV shows with him and with Ice Cube over this very thing, what we're talking about here, gangs and that kind of stuff. This was about 30 years ago. And one of the things I learnt from him, he said to me, you can allow racism to dictate your life, or you can dictate to racism. And that's when I realised I'm going to dictate to racism. I'm not going to sit there in this bubble. I was in a real bad situation. I'm not going to kid you not. I was mentally not fit. I was unstable. My whole mindset was getting up every day, which white man I'm going to kill. It was a wrong, and I'm so glad for Bernie Grant and Jesse Jackson and it ruined my relationship as well, because what person's going to wants to be with a guy that walks around wanting killing white people? It's not logic. No matter what bitterness you've gone through, you ain't going to want that. So
it's mental, because I've known you for a little while now, Sheldon, and to hear you say that you moved like that, I'm looking at you now, I can't see it at all.
I know, I wasn't.
You know what I'm saying?
The person that you're sitting,
yeah,
but the person back then, I was a Rasta. My dreadlocks was down to here.
Okay.
I smoked like, I just can't even tell you how I smoked till my eyes was red. You know, I had a 9mm on the side. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's I grew up in a very mentally unstable manner, and I was mentally unfit.
Right.
But you know what it took? It took
these guys off.
It took Jesse Jackson and them lot to really see past the facade, and it was them who broke down to me that I can live my life like it is, and because he's right. What Jesse Jackson was saying to me was, you're going to end up killing somebody, and that means that's your life finished,
right.
Or somebody's going to kill you because you're trying to kill them, and that's your life finished. Or you can go out and then your kids are going to hate you because you weren't a good father to them. And when he started to put that picture, that's when I began to realise, you know what I'm saying? And
you're going to lose.
You know, you can't win. Because you know what he said to me? He said to me, how much white man can you fight?
Yeah.
Let's be honest. How much white man can you fight? Okay, so I'll get up one morning, I beat up a white man, then I beat up another one. How long? Do you see what I'm saying? And what he was saying to me, basically, he was saying that it doesn't even make logic sense.
He made you look ahead.
Yeah, and he was saying, we can't allow slavery to determine how angry we get. So he was showing me how to get back at those people in establishment.
Why did they reach out to you? How did you...
Basically what had happened was, my gang began to self-implode, self-destruct.
Mm-hmm.
How many people deep was it by then?
It was still about 25, maybe 30 man, maybe.
Original members?
Yeah, not original, no. Some of them dropped out, more people came in. Mm-hmm. Basically what happened was the Jamaicans came over because they were on the run from the DEA. From America? Yeah, from America. Mm-hmm. Now the Jamaicans gangs controlled the crack cocaine in America. No one knows about this because basically what happened, Pablo Escobar didn't want to sell on streets. He just wanted to sell in bulk.
He was a clean cut
Yeah,
man.
so he wanted to sell the drugs. So when he transported the drugs, he didn't want to get involved in the dealings on the day-to-day thing. He just wanted to sell in bulk and you make it. So he would fly the drugs into America, but the Jamaicans would be doing the distribution.
Footwork.
Right, but the Jamaican gangs had a thing about shooting people. So what happened was, say for instance you owed money to the Jamaican gang, and in them days it was dancehall, so they would know where to find him because he'd be at the dancehall. They didn't go and shoot him, they shot everyone in the dancehall. So when they would go up there, is they wouldn't just shoot, they wouldn't say, yeah, see the man there, we're going to wait for him when they come out the shop. No. They'll go in, kick off the door, everyone that is in the shop, granny, pitney, is getting sprayed. That's why the DEA went mad, because the Jamaicans were causing chaos. When you go on the internet tonight, put it in. They were what you call ruthless. So what happened was the DEA started to get certain man. Then they ran to England. When they came to England, that's when we stopped fighting the police and joined up with the Jamaicans to sell crack cocaine. I didn't get involved in that. I was still an enforcer, yeah? So I was the guy that you came to who owed money. So for instance, if a man owed the man their money, they'd be like, just send Sheldon. Because I was known for breaking kneecaps with my baseball bat and that kind of stuff. So you know what I'm saying? That was the kind of person that I was.